Hey everyone, welcome to our event tonight to celebrate the book release for the Saguaro Cactus and Natural History. We're really happy that y'all are here. And a big thanks to Amy and Doug Smith, owners of Crisol, for hosting us tonight. They are working hard behind the bar. We really appreciate it. And apologies, we're a bit on Tucson time, which I think some of us may appreciate. Maybe some of you from out of town and get to appreciate that. So I totally get that. We're gonna have food soda pretty soon. Please, during the program, you're welcome to come up and have some nibbles. I'd like to ask the authors if they can come up, and these are your luxurious seats over here, your hot seats for tonight. And we will get our program started. And to start us off, I would love to see, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes, and we'll hand the mic over to Alberta. I feel it might be safe for us. I want to introduce to y'all our editor-in-chief of the University of Arizona Press, Kristen Buckles. She's going to do our show on the road for us. And it's a pleasure to have her come up. So please welcome Kristen Buckles.
Hi everyone. My name is Kristen Buckles. First of all, thank you so much to Doug and David Yetman for hosting this event in this amazing space. This is terrific. This is the beginning, the first event that we're having here. We're just really excited to be here. I'm the editor-in-chief, and I have the great honor to work with the distinguished authors on this fabulous book. The University of Arizona Press, our mission is to publish books about Arizona and the Southwest for readers, both in our great state, but also beyond. And so, what could be more Arizona than a book about the Saguaro Cactus? So I was just really thrilled for working on this book and shepherding this book through publication. And this book is really the vehicle for publishing many of our books on Arizona and the Southwest is through a fabulous series that we work on. It's called the Southwest Center Series. And it's a series we've been working on for a long time, partnering with the Southwest Center at the University of Arizona. And I don't know if everyone knows about the Southwest Center. It is a magnificent, phenomenal center that is just, I think, a jewel in the crown of the University of Arizona. It's a center that has the most distinguished group of thinkers, writers, academics, scholars writing about Arizona and the Southwest. And so it's a real honor for us to partner with the Southwest Center on a series of books, including this book that we're celebrating tonight, which is in the series. And so it's an honor for me to introduce the director of the Southwest Center, Dr. Jeff Bannister.
Wow, welcome everyone. This is a really gratifying turnout. So I was on my way over here this afternoon and I'm thinking, what am I going to say? Trying to figure things out a little bit, get a lay of the land. And I thought, wow, I have been in this position so many times introducing David Yetman for some kind of an award. Another book, another award, some TV show by anywhere. But I'm like, come on, Dave, you got to give us, the rest of us, a chance here. Yeah, but it actually is an incredible honor to be up here to introduce our distinguished group of scholars, Alberto and David and Kevin. And I just want to take a quick second before I do that to say how actually I want to honor this friendship and research partnership that Alberto Borges and David Yetman have sustained for several decades. It's a really incredible thing. It's just to see the two of you, all the incredible field work that you've done. I applaud you, and I feel so grateful to be associated with you. I'm so grateful to be part of that. So thank you very much. Okay, so let's get on with the show here. I'm just going to briefly read through the bios because I think it's important that the train blows its whistle right now. Okay, actually, before I do that, though, I just remembered, I also want to note that this is a beautifully designed book. And I want to thank the University of Arizona Press for all of its hard work here. I don't know who the copy editor was, but I can tell that it's been brilliantly and expertly copy edited. It's been lovingly designed. And I just want to thank the press and Kristen for this really long association that we've had with University of Arizona Press. We really appreciate it. So thank you. Okay. So your authors today. So Alberto Borges is a researcher at the Instituto de Ecología at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, otherwise known as UNAM. His major interests focus on the study of plant-animal interactions, biogeography, and the ecology of dryland plants. Kevin Huntline received his PhD in renewable resources from the University of Arizona and has been a research ecologist with the Department of Research, Conservation, and Collections at the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix, Arizona since 2011. He also holds adjunct faculty appointments in the School of Life Sciences at Arizona State University and the School of Earth Sciences and Environmental Sustainability at Northern Arizona University. And he is currently a plant science editor for the Oxford University Press journal, Conservation Physiology. Okay, so he's busy. A lot of stuff there. Michael Sanderson is a professor in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Arizona. His research focuses on genomics and the evolutionary biology of plants, including cacti, of course, if you're wondering, with a special interest in computational methods and challenges in these areas. And last but not least, my colleague, Dr. David Yetman, who is a research social scientist, sorry, this thing is after me, at the Southwest Center, and an author of many books and host of the show In the Americas with David Yetman. Thank you all for coming and talking to us about your incredible book. I have a question. I just want to plant one question in your minds. You don't have to answer it right now. But I do want to know what it was like with the three of you working together.
One of the problems I constantly run into is people saying, I really like your program at Desert Speaks, but who is that really handsome guy, the distinguished looking guy you see on your program a lot? I said, well, that's me. No, that's my dear friend Alberto Borges, who brings that Cambridge University accent to his already very good Spanish and English. So we do have a long history. I kind of got into the Saguaro Cactus because I moved to Arizona in 1954. And like many of you, I have very distinct memory of the first time I saw Saguaro Cactus. And if you don't have that memory, you need to recreate it. You need to go to special counseling that deals with repressed memories, because it's a fundamental part of our life as we live here in the desert. And the obsession with cacti has been with me for a long time. I read in 1982 an article which we have reprinted in the book, written by a high school schoolmate of mine, about the ethnobotany of the saguaro. Frank Crosswhite, we knew him as Sam Crosswhite as Preston High. And I read that and I got to thinking, because Sam very clearly illustrated the importance to the entire culture of the Italamanata of the saguaro cactus. It is not only their most important plant, but their calendrical year rotates around the flowering and fruiting sequence of the saguaro. And I thought that's pretty interesting because in the 1960s, late 60s, I had a chance to spend a lot of time with the Seri Indians down in the Gulf coast of Sonora around Kino Bay. And for them, the giant cactus, Cactuseus pringlei, known as the sahueso or the cardon sahueso, was their most important plant. The flowering and fruiting of that cactus made their life possible in a way that they could not have survived otherwise. When I began working with the Mayo people in southern Sonora back in the 90s, I found, lo and behold, their most important part was the organ pipe cactus. The fruits and the lumber, in addition to a number of other uses that plant has, was indispensable for them. From them, I had a chance to work with the Guadajillo people of the Sierras in Sonora and Chihuahua, and lo and behold, their most important plant was yes, thank you, back there, cactus, that's correct. The H.O. cactus, Cactuseus pecten aborigine. I'm onto something here. I've discovered a pattern that no one else has ever thought about. It didn't work out that way, but right about that time was when Alberto and I began working together. We found that we had a similar fascination with all kinds of plants, but especially cacti. Out of that long-term association has come a book that will be published at some point by the University of Arizona Press on southern Oaxaca, two valleys in southern Oaxaca, which are really the cradle of columnar cacti, the valleys of Cuicatlan and Tehuacan. So look for this book probably in 2023, maybe a little later than that, if we survive that long under Trump. I'm sorry, this is not a political talk. I keep forgetting. That gave us also an opportunity to study a lot of cacti, but also to understand the importance of the agave to native peoples. And guess what we migrated into studying agave in Oaxaca? Mezcal. Yes. So it's highly appropriate to have a mezcal bar to bring us to the realities of cacti and agaves in the Americas. As Alberto and I worked together, he began to focus more and more on the saguaro. One of his students, who is now a professor, Dr. Enriqueta Bustamante, is here tonight. She is an expert due to our fascination and her deep learning of the organ pipe cactus. And she is probably one of the 2 or 3 international experts on that. Kana, would you just raise your hand so we know who you are? She has given us a scientific basis to understanding the organ pipe. But fortunately for all of us, Alberto became obsessed with the saguaro, and Kana has done work with him on saguaro, and he put together a team of other scientists that have brought together the science that makes our book a success. Kevin, who is truly the expert on the anatomy and physiology of the saguaro. Mike, who couldn't be here, who has gone into the arcane intricacies of the genomics of the saguaro and the fascination that scientists now have, particularly. I know that most of you realize that the genome of the chloroplast of the saguaro is very small. Now, I don't have to tell that to you, right? You're all familiar with that. But that is some of the discoveries that have come out in this book make me happy to be with it, because I'm not a scientist. I'm a mild-mannered drudge that wanders around. But the pleasure that I have of dealing with these 2 scientists, and Mike as well, I wish Mike could be here, has made my life much richer. I was really fortunate 2 years ago to be in the valleys of Cuicatlan and Tehuacan with a group of 10 scientists, mostly from Arizona, who went down to study columnar cacti. And if you think that's fun, if you combine cacti, columnar cacti, southern Mexico, and mezcal, that is life worth living. So the history of this book is Alberto and I said, we need to put together a book on the saguaro, perhaps 5 or 6 years ago. And we then decided that we could not come up with the appropriate way of doing it without mezcal. And so mezcal introduced us to new visions for saguaro, And Alberto then can go and describe how his studies came to work in this book. And there is always mescal in the background here and there.
Well, it is impossible to compete with David. He's a TV host, he's a renowned author. So I do science. I think that's a very important subject. We go to the field, we stay inside the whole day, sweating and measuring plants and not moving, and the waves are just crashing on that beautiful beach that you cannot reach because you have to finish your hard ecological work. But one day we were coming down the Tehuacan Valley, driving towards another site. I think we were going to Petlanco, that the heart of the valleys, where many species of columnar cacti do grow. And we said, we think it's time to do a work on the saguaro, just to try to assemble all the information we have on the saguaro. Because the saguaro embodies the fascination we have with these strange plants of the desert. Of that cartoon we all saw of a coyote and a roadrunner and a lone saguaro in Monument Valley. And this is the most absurd idea, because there are no saguaros in Monument Valley. Roadrunners are much shorter in height, and coyotes are really, really very intelligent beings. So, columnar cacti are a group of plants that live down in the tropics. Are tropical plants that started evolving like 30 million years ago and started diversifying and spread out in central Mexico. There are two clades. There is one, well, cacti originated in South America. And then there were two branches, one towards the south that created all these amazing columnar cacti in South America, and another branch that went northwards, ventured northwards, and started radiating, producing many, many species in northern Mexico, in Mexico. And a few decided to start moving northwards. And the saguaro represents the vanguard of this group of columnar cacti that are slowly advancing north. It's the most adventurous, perhaps, of all the columnar cacti. So we started assembling this book that was a dream when driving in the valleys of Tehuacan, Yucatan. That is the mother lode of the columnar cacti of North America. And finally, we are here talking about them, finishing the book with great colleagues like Kevin, very, very good friend, expert physiologist, my great friend David, Mike that couldn't come, but is doing extraordinary work on the genomics of saguaro. We just found, we're just writing a paper now showing where the Pleistocene refuges of the saguaro were in southern Sonora. Because every glaciation when the cold came, the populations of saguaro disappeared here because they were frozen. They just freeze to death. So there was a retreat in the populations south into Mexico. And in the interglacials, they started coming back and replenished again their places in the United States. But in that time, there were no borders, no walls. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't mention it. So I am very pleased to be in your company, and I really appreciate coming here and being with us.
So about 2 decades ago, I was a grad student here actually at U of A, and I had this TV that was about 3 inches in size. It was a black and white TV. It didn't really get any any stations, but it got PBS. And occasionally I turn on this program with this guy, Desert Speaks. I was like, well, that looks pretty cool. And then he did this program from Oaxaca. I was like, man, I gotta go there sometime. That looks really cool. And 2 years ago, I finally went to Oaxaca with the guy that introduced me to David here. Alberto was on the trip. And the amazing thing for anybody who studies cactus, anybody been to the Tucson Valley? A couple of people. So the Tucson Valley is an amazing place. It's very scenic, of course, but it is the epicenter of giant cacti diversity. There's about 17 species. Does that sound about right? As Alberto pointed out, there's also in South America these wonderfully large cactus species as well. And it's a great place to look at biodiversity of giant cacti. And that was actually at a time when Alberto, he and I were walking around the desert, drinking mezcal. Alberto said, hey, David and I are writing this book. You want to help out? Of course. Maybe say no to that. And so we hashed out what we do. The amazing thing about saguaro is when you walk around, you see these other species that look a lot like saguaro, but they're not. That's the thing. Saguaro is actually different. It actually really is unique. And one of the things that I always am interested in, I study how plants use water, and they store water. But saguaros are actually really, really good at it. And they're actually better at it than I would argue than these other giant cacti species. They have these very specific traits that allow them to actually store more water under drier conditions than almost any other cactus species out there. And so somebody like me, who's a desert rat, who likes studying water relations of plants, it's like, well, you got to figure out what this stuff is. Why is it these plants are able to survive in so little water? And the fact is, how old do you think a saguaro lives? We've always discussed this. 200, maybe 200, maybe 100 years, we don't really know. But I will challenge you to try to kill a saguaro by not watering it. It probably won't work. That's actually one of the amazing things about it, is that it will find a way to survive in some of the harshest conditions that other species cannot. And so that was really what motivated me to want to get involved in saguaro research. I met Alberto a few years ago. We immediately started collaborating. It was kind of a natural to collaborate. And we actually are hoping to do a show sometime, a series that we're trying to do on giant cacti. I know, Dave, I know. We're working on it. Nobody works for free, I know. But it's just been a pleasure to collaborate with these guys. And Mike isn't here, but Mike is a brilliant geneticist who's really pulled together some of the most compelling research on cactus genetics that is in the book. So really kudos to him as well. So that's all I have to say at the moment.
I will take this opportunity to make you the first informed that in your future, you have an opportunity to accompany some of us to the valleys of Cuicatlan and Tehuacan and Oaxaca and Puebla. At the end of September, early October of this coming year, a select group of 10 people will pay fabulous prices to join the Southwest Center and Alberto and me and others in finding out why cacti are so great and why the Saguaro cactus has its deep origins. You heard it here. Sign up now, make your deposit of $25,000. But please put that on your calendar. It will be announced, and Dr. Bannister will be making this public quite soon. I'm perfect. Jeff, you want to field questions because some of them could be really brutal.
Yeah, so we'd like to open the floor up for questions if anyone has them. Yeah, go ahead.
I've got a question. I just read in the book recently that the scientific name for the Saguaro genus was Carnegie, and that was initially assigned in an expedition to the Tecate area about 100 years ago. It seems to me that the Saguaro would have been scientifically described prior to that, and it would have had a different name possibly. Curious about that.
You had to bring that question up. It is a result of political chicanery. My colleagues can talk about taxonomy, which is there are rigid protocols in labeling genera and species and everything on up to the kingdoms. Andrew Carnegie funded the Desert Laboratory in the early part of the 20th century here in Tucson on Tucson Hill. And some panderers who were working there thought when he came to visit, he would be honored to know that a great cactus had been named after him. It was already called Cereus gigantea. It had its own name, but they changed it to Carnegie, the genus, to hope that he would continue to fund. He was furious when he found that out because he viewed it as shameless pamphlet, which of course was, no question. But he did continue to fund the Desert Laboratory. What has happened in our work here, particularly my colleagues' work, is going to wreak havoc in the future because there are other cactus genera that are very closely related to the saguaro and are numerous. For instance, the genus Pachycereus primulii, which is the Cordonsa oyster the genus Neobuchbaumia, which abounds in central and southern Mexico, are very closely related. Because Carnegie genus was named first, that name gets precedence over Pachycereus and Neobuchbaumia. So when the taxonomists decide on the basis of people's work like Mike Sanderson's, that saguaro is very closely related to A, B, C, and D, they're going to have to be, by protocol, become Carnegie. And I want to turn this over to Alberto and Kevin and see what they think the prognosis for that is.
Well, Andrew Carnegie will be very happy about that, for sure. But I think it's a two-pronged thing, you see. One is that it would be great if Pachycereus became Carnegie because of the legacy of Andrew Carnegie just by creating the Desert Laboratory. And I think it's a great name for it. And on the other hand, most taxonomists love the name Pachycereus because it means the big serious cacti, the thick serious cacti. So it's a very descriptive name. The prognosis, most likely with the help of producing the Saguaro genome by Dario Copetti and Mike Sanderson, they lead a whole group of researchers, including me. We are able now to explicate what are the species relationships. That's been a very tough issue to separate species and see how they are related to each other. And most likely will be the case that once we do that, Carnegie probably will replace some extant names in the taxonomy. We don't, most likely Pachycereus. And that means that the Cardon you see in Quino Bay and Baja California will become another Carnegie.
No, I agree. I hear the boos coming from the audience. It's a philosophy. It's wrong. It's morally and it's spiritually bereft. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
So given Kevin's comments that saguaros will find a way to find water, explain to me about the range of saguaros relative to climate change.
Yeah, it's one of those black box questions that we're all a little bit afraid to ask. What the saguaros grow, if you drive from Phoenix to Flagstaff and you enter Black Canyon City and Black Canyon, you reach the end of the road for saguaros. You leave the Sonoran Desert and head up onto the plateau. And I have my doubts that saguaro are going to make it up that hill. It's just too steep. So to the north, I don't see saguaros necessarily expanding this range. But I think the worry with saguaros is not about whether it can persist under extreme conditions, but can it actually germinate? Do you have a population that can actually develop under future conditions? One example, if you've ever been to the Kofa Mountains, which is about the western extent of where saguaros grow in the northern Sonoran Desert, and if you walk around, you'll see these beautiful 2-meter tall saguaros. And I can tell you how old those saguaros are. You may, for those of you who've been in this area since the 1980s, you remember the El Nino years, correct? Those saguaros got established during those years, but there has not been establishment in that population since. And if we do not see the opportunities for establishment, and if we are not able to see places where nurse plants are going to continue to persist, then climate change is going to have a pretty deleterious impact on the distribution of saguaros in the future. But there has been some climate niche models that suggest that saguaros are only going to occur around Las Vegas. I think those models are pretty silly, personally. I think that, again, I think if there's opportunity for recruitment, that you'll see them to continue to persist under future conditions here around Tucson and even in places around Phoenix. But it's really about those opportunities for recruitment that's going to drive their future distribution, I think.
There is one of the things that we have in the book, which I'd say part of science that has developed in the last decade or so, is the fact that, like tree rings, the spines on saguaros and other cacti carry with them a record of past climates in rings, believe it or not. And if you go home and shine a light very carefully on the saguaro spine, particularly the ones that are long enough, you will see those rings. Alberto talked about acanthophrology.
Yeah, so David's right. If you shine a light, you can see a saguaro spine. You can actually see bands, and those bands actually represent daily growth, which is pretty cool. And a saguaro spine really only takes a few weeks to completely grow. But I think one of the really fascinating opportunities with spines, and this is actually something that's rare with many giant cacti species, but when the spines are actually maintained on the plant for up to maybe 100 years. And so that provides a record for actually aging the plants, because the newest spines grow from the apex to the top. And as you look down the side of a plant, they're progressively older and older. And we could use tools such as radiocarbon. For example, if any of you were around in the 1950s, what happened in the 1950s? There's a lot of above ground nuclear testing. And so all of this radio material got released into the atmosphere, and over time it's being slowly absorbed by the oceans. But we could use that slow absorption to actually measure the radiocarbon in the spines and age the spines themselves. This is a great way to measure growth rates of plants. Unfortunately, most cactus species don't retain their spines over time. So we talked about cardone cactus. It doesn't work for cardones because they actually don't maintain their spines, or in some cases they'll replace the spines. It doesn't work. Saguaros actually do keep their spines, and it provides a really interesting and powerful tool to measure growth rates and measure ages of cactus plants. Now, or at least saguaros. Now, if you go back before the 1950s, it gets a little bit more difficult because the so-called bomb spike obviously doesn't exist prior to the 1950s. But there are still tools where we can measure the radiocarbon and at least get within a couple of decades of the age of the oldest spine. So if you walk around, you see a saguaro, you see a spine in the base of the plant, you pluck that spine and we can get a reasonable idea if you have a couple $100 to run the analysis with the ages of that spine.
Yes.
Most saguaro research has been done in the United States, but most saguaros live in Mexico. What are we missing?
A lot.
A lot indeed. Most of the work that has been published in the scientific literature has been done not only in the United States, but in Tucson, around Tucson, and nowhere else. So there are very few sites that have been studied carefully, and even fewer in Mexico. The virtue of our latest work is that we selected 16 populations across the whole range, and we are following them all. And we are correlating growth rates measured as the flame passes. This is a great thing because I love it. And measure how the growth rates correlate with climate. And the great surprise is that it's not precipitation what drives, as Kevin remarked, it's not precipitation what drives the growth. That is what you expect from most plants. Lettuces need water to grow, but not saguaros. Saguaros' growth rate depends greatly on the variance on temperature during winter. How variable is temperature during winter will determine later on how much they grow. So, and these sort of questions can only be answered when you start studying many sites across the whole range. Because if you study only one site, then you need many years of studying the same plants to elucidate a pattern. But in one single year, if you study many sites, then you can discover that very same pattern.
One of the sites that Alberto and I have spent time on is the southernmost population, the Mesa Masiaca, which is in southern Sonora, about 400 some miles south of Tucson. And there may be saguaro south of that, I doubt it, but we've looked. And we have spent time on that mesa. Now it's a little bit more difficult because there are a lot of narco transactions going on at the base. But they grow very well among basaltic boulders. And we discovered one day climbing up there with some of my Mayo friends, two things. First, Mayos, their villages, they are very poor people, and they are rich in culture, but economically they are impoverished. They still like to transplant saguaros from that hill to their villages because they think they're an oddity. And they have plenty of organ pies, plenty of edges around, but they love those unusual saguaros from that hill. But the other thing that we found climbing up on that hill was some of these large basaltic boulders, if you strike them with metal, they sing. And I'm afraid that to Alberto's great boredom, I tried to play the anvil chorus on several boulders one day, playing the various sounds. So the Mesa Masiaca not only has the southernmost population of saguaros, but it has great, teeny sounding basaltic boulders. The rigors of science. Any other questions?
Do you see the crested saguaros in certain regions more than others? And also, I have a question about the arms. You see some that are, multiple arms and some that are just a few. And I'm wondering, even though they're in the same region, like what determines how they grow their arms?
Crested saguaros, was it one in 10,000 plants or 1 in 20,000 or something like that? It's pretty rare. It's a genetic mutation. As far as I know, there isn't necessarily a geographical pattern to where you see them. Perhaps you guys know, but in terms of the arms, they tend to grow arms at a certain height, not necessarily a certain age. Some populations will grow much faster than others. And the production of arms, of course, a big reason to produce arms, of course, is it increases the opportunity to produce flowers. And so you have a lot of arms, you can produce a lot of flowers, but it also does take resources to build those arms. And this is a big reason why you don't see arms until typically about 3 meters tall. There are exceptions. If you walk around the desert, you'll see some that are, I've seen some with arms down about 1 meter, but that's pretty rare. And but it's really it's about the production of flowers. And once the plant starts to produce arms, you think the main stem will grow much slower. But if you measure the entire growth of the plant with all these arms, then the growth rates actually probably increase dramatically at that point.
But regarding the geographic distribution of these strange forms, I never seen a pattern. They appear here and there in very, very low. We don't know. Nobody knows that. It's related to mutations. So, and at the end, it has to be with radiation, even solar radiation. The thing about branching is really, really interesting. It has to do with demography, with the demographics of saguaros. Young populations of saguaros do not have many arms simply because they are young, while very old populations that are decaying, are composed mainly of many branches individuals. But the great remark that Kevin made now, and he made me aware of that, I am grateful for that, is that when a saguaro puts an extra arm, he's doubling their reproductive, or is tending towards doubling their reproductive output. In that sense, they have a very high evolutionary advantage in terms of how many offspring they can live in a generation.
In terms of the crested saguaros, that cresting effect does not confine to saguaros by any means. I have 8 different species of Conmar cacti and photos of them, and some of them get really grotesque cresting forms, which brings their attention. Everywhere there are those cacti, people, whether they're native peoples or outsiders, wonder, where does that come from? I have one particular organ pipe cactus that has a huge and grotesque cresting form. And I was out with a Mayo friend once, and I said, do they give any fruit? And he said, well, they do, but you don't want to eat them. And I said, why? He said, well, look at the plant. You don't want to eat a fruit that comes off a plant like that. So the cresting, little mammillaria pincushion cactus have a monstrous or a crested form. Even some non-cacti, some other succulents have the crested form. So maybe it's genetic, or I think it's probably the work of the devil. Or other spiritual beings. Anyone else? And thank you guys for coming. Thank you for supporting the book and supporting the University of Arizona Press. Oh, one more question.
You're talking about plants. We were walking out at Seawater. And just triggering small water.
I think you're trying to look, the question was, they were walking out on Sweetwater, there weren't that many small saguaros. Go down on Sweetwater to where the county road ends and the private road begins. And you will find a hillside that is composed of 70 million year old Cat Mountain tuff. And it has dozens and dozens of young saguaros, probably from the same cohort, 1983 floods, and they are very, very healthy, and reproduction is really quite successful. But if you want to find, and they are, as Kevin described, they're probably a meter or so high. But if you want to find younger ones, that gives you an indication of how difficult recruitment can be for these plants. They require a wet summer to help the seeds germinate, and rain after that to keep them from drying out. And even from studies that I have read, and my colleagues probably know better, a second moist summer really makes recruitment possible.
Yeah, it appears that late summer moisture of the year before through a wet winter and then a wet summer follows that's the sweet spot.
As I was saying, thanks for coming, everybody, and have at your food, have at mezcal, and have at your neighbors, and have at the books. Thank you.
Hey everyone, just wanted to pop in a little bit before. Do not forget to